Hey guys, what's up? Today I'm gonna show you 10 really obscure games that I decided to cover with two special guests. That's right, I'll be covering 4 games and each of my guests will be covering 3. Right, it's gonna be very interesting because these games are from different consoles, different eras, different generations altogether. But what they all have in common is that they're very extremely obscure. Alright, let's begin! Alright guys, here is the legendary Zoltan. He is known for composing the musical theme of my intro, the intro I use in my videos on my second channel, my main channel, Erick Landon RPG. The legendary Zoltan, the man himself. How you doing, man?
Oh, thank you very much. I'm doing great.
Awesome. So let's just start with number 10. Sultan picked 3 games for this video and he's gonna open up the top with number 10, which is...
It's Kendo Rage for the SNES. This game is a kind of an action game. The whole setting is that you gotta get to school on time. And so the game starts at 4 a.m. in the morning and you just gotta get through all the 7 stages by 8 a.m. It's just an action game where you run around with a kendo sword. It's called a shinai. I think the best thing about this game is really just the art style. The gameplay is kind of wonky. You know, like you want to just make a quick little turn to the left if you're facing to the right, but they won't, if you just tap the button, she won't quickly turn. She'll just like back up a little bit without changing the way she's facing. So it's got some kind of weird controls like that, but overall, yeah, it's I guess a solid enough action game where you run around hitting things with the sword. It's got some interesting mechanics where there are these there's these enemies containing orbs flying around, and when you hit them, when they have a certain color orb, you can gain a power onto your sword. There's like a projectile or an attack where you hit lots of times in a row and stuff. Maybe it's it'll be your cup of tea if you're into watching a cute anime girl with a kendo sword go through this comedy game. That's basically the high point, the selling point of that game.
Nice.
The setting and the comedy and the art.
So it's not to be taken seriously, it's just a game to enjoy, like pretty much most Japanese games.
I suppose so, yeah. Yeah, it's not dramatic at all.
All right, so number 9, coming in at number 9, it's my turn, and I got this excellent masterpiece called My Riding Stables on the PlayStation 4. It's a horse simulator, obviously. I'm kidding. This piece of shit is not my number 9. It's pretty much an obscure game, you know. Nobody knows this game, thankfully. Anyway, no, I want to make you guys aware of my real number 9, which is one of my favorite games on the NES. It's this masterpiece called Xexis, published and developed by Hudson Soft. Now, this is a game that has 2 gameplay mechanics. It's a game that the first mission is going to be a side-scrolling platformer, and the other mission is going to be a shoot-'em-up, a horizontal shoot-'em-up, and it's going to be one mission of each genre, and so on. And it's very good. Controls are responsive. The jumping mechanics are fine. The shoot-'em-up elements could have been a little bit better. I think they could have worked a little bit more on those, because they are nowhere near as fast-paced as in most shoot-'em-ups. I mean, it feels more as if you were playing a Gradius or Gradius game. But either way, it's still great. What you need to do here is pretty much find a key to defeat a guardian and then unlock the next stage, which is usually inside this science fiction tower where you'll traverse, you know, where you'll do most of the platforming, as a matter of fact, and then you'll go straight into the shoot-'em-up missions. So there's a lot of variety here. It never gets old. It doesn't bore you at all. Near the end of the game, you finish the game and you're like, wow, it's over. It's such a great game. The music is outstanding. There's only like 5 music themes here, and each of them is just as great. Xexis, definitely recommended. Hidden gem, that's a perfect term for this amazing game. Anyway, so Xexis. All right, this is my buddy Defthead. You know him as Oscar. He's been several times in some of my videos on Erick Landon RPG. And he and I also have a channel in Spanish called Discusión Gamer. So how's it going, man?
Everything is all right. So far, so good, and very excited to participate on this video. I think we have a very good game to talk about.
Indeed we do. So hit it up with number 8, man. What's number 8?
All right, for number 8, I chose a game that, well, I would consider very obscure. every Extend Extra for the PSP. Every Extend Extra is, we can call it a rhythm game. If you look at it, if you look at playing it, it might look like one of those twin stick shooters like Geometry Wars, but in reality it's completely different, right? In this particular game, you actually control a ship, but instead of shooting, you actually detonate yourself. The interesting piece of this game is that it actually it's at the rhythm of the game. If you have a bunch of enemies that are going to surround you, and the idea is that you actually detonate yourself as close as possible as those enemies, but doing it at the beat of the music. Because if you do it at the beat of the music, you are going to have an extra power, and the more power you actually use when you detonate, the more changes you can form in the game. So the idea of the game is to form as many chains as possible, detonating yourself and the enemies, while collecting power-ups to increase the time, because you're against the time on this game. So for PSP, again, this is a great game to play on the go, and one that actually has a really good music. And if you like all the trance electronic music, you are going to love this game.
So for me, it's number 7, and number 7 is a survival horror game called White Day. White Day, a labyrinth called School, something like that. It's a weird subtitle. And yes, it's a Korean survival horror game, not a Japanese one. And it takes place precisely in a school. And this is a first-person survival horror game. And you're probably wondering, but Erick, you don't like any first-person games, and that's right. But this, I like to believe it's an exception, because it really got me interested. It got me, hooked up in the game. And I believe it has some interesting mechanics, because it's a little bit, it takes some small influence from games like Clock Tower or Hunting Ground, where there's a character chasing you or trying to find you and kill you. So you gotta hide often. And then there's a lot of puzzle making, of course, like in many survival horror games, like get this key to open the door that's all the way in the back, to get the gem that fits in this locker and whatever. So there's a lot of puzzle solving as usual, but the gist of the game is precisely that it takes place in a school. You are a student and you're trying to hide from these supernatural, enemies, or pretty much the natural enemies. I don't want to spoil too much, because explaining what the enemies are is a huge spoiler in the game. So White Day on the PlayStation 4, it's also on mobile devices and on PC. All right, man, so coming in at number 6, we've got a game you need to cover.
That's right. I chose for the PlayStation 3 a shoot-'em-up called Soldner-x. I never looked into the developers of this game, but I assume it's a German shoot-'em-up because the names all look like German. I think
Yes.
the subtitle Soldner. Yeah, I think it's called Soldner-x, the Himmelströmer or something like that. So, and this is the first. I guess I would say it is bullet hell, because there are a lot of bullets. And a lot of things obstructing your way. I find it very difficult. It has a lot of difficulty settings. Like even just normal mode is like obscenely difficult for me. So there's like, easy, very easy, beginner. There's like 3 levels before normal even. So that tells you how hard normal mode is. And really great art. I don't know if it's pixel art or if it's hand drawn, but it looks like just they took like a picture of whatever somebody drew and then it's moving in the thing. So I'm not exactly sure how they did it, but it looks really beautiful. The bosses are gigantic robots, which is what we all want when we play, shooting games. It's got this mechanic where you build up this gauge as you shoot, and you have 2 weapons. You have like this lightning bolt attack, and you have a straightforward laser. And the lightning bolt is stronger, but it only hits one enemy and then it disappears. Whereas the lightning bolt is weaker, but it shoots through all the enemies and hits everyone all at once. I had a really good time. It has awesome, I don't know any shoot 'em up game that has bad music, and this one is the same way. It's got awesome music. Freaking stage 3 is the asteroid field level, and it's just got this groovy dance bass, like it's really fun.
All right.
Yeah.
So it's a game that it's digital only as far as I'm concerned. I've seen physical versions on the PlayStation Vita release, but they're like, Japanese versions only. And I think it's also on Steam, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, most of the versions of these games are digital only.
All right, for the number 5 of the list, we had a fighting game, and in this case, it's going to be Waku 7. This is the Japanese version. However, this has been released on the ACA Neo Geo collections on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and of course on the Nintendo Switch by Hamster. And it was originally a Neo Geo game. This is a fighting game, interestingly enough, coming from Sunsoft, which is not really, I don't know, it's not really known for their fighting games. But this one in particular is quite good. It's called Waku 7 because there are 7 balls or 7 spheres that actually each one of the characters have one of them. And if you put all of them together, you can you can ask for a wish. It's 7 because there are 7 characters. Although in multiplayer mode, you actually can fight with 2 more. The interesting thing about this game is, first of all, is as you can see, the cast of the characters is really good. It's really cartoonish, more like an anime type, but more like in the wacky side. Interestingly enough, it's Waku, and wacky is kind of a word, puzzle. They are really cartoonish. They are quite good. They are animated perfectly. I mean, really awesome animation on this game. The gameplay is also really good. You actually have each one of these balls that actually are part of the game. They are not only for the history or the story of the game. They actually part of the gameplay because each one of the characters that you fight is going to have one of these balls, and if you defeat it, you're going to get it. So the number of balls that you have is going to allow you to do special moves, and the more you have, the more more often you can do these special moves.
Waku on several different platforms, including the Switch.
Right, the Switch, PS4, Xbox One, of course, Neo Geo, AES, and NDS, and there is this port and the Sega Saturn.
It's everywhere. You have no excuse not to play this game.
Exactly.
Number 4 is Tokyo Twilight Ghost Hunters, also on the Vita and the PlayStation 4. This is a game that is so weird, man, so unique. There's no real short way to describe this game, so I'll do my best. It's one of those cross-genre games that combines visual novel, RPG, puzzle, strategy. It's very weird. Most of the time you'll be reading and making decisions, but the decision making is so goddamn unique here that the game doesn't properly explain to you what you're doing when you're deciding certain things or how you react to certain characters. So it's more of a reaction system than anything. Instead of choosing a decision, you do a reaction, and that'll give you points with certain characters or make you lose points with certain characters. So it's half a visual novel, but the other half is about the battle system. The battle system it plays down in this weird ass view, as in a top-down view, but in a board looking place. And you got your characters positioned in there, and you gotta move them little by little to find the ghosts. And once they find a ghost, you'll change screens into this new battle screen where you can see the full animation of the enemy, of the ghost, and you'll make a series of decisions, menu-based commands to take them out. So it's very weird, but it's also kind of slow and kind of tedious. I don't recommend this game to everybody. I think it's very niche and very hard to get into. If you're gonna play this game, try to play it for the story, because the story is where it stands out. Of course, it has a lot of anime cliches, like it takes place in a high school, you're a student, blah, blah, blah. It's very interesting because you join this organization of ghost hunters, and it goes darker than what it needs to be. And that's what makes it so interesting and so appealing.
Okay, for number 3, I chose Magic Pen Gel for the PlayStation 2. In Japanese, it's called Rakugaki Okoku. It is a RPG, a JRPG, I guess, for little kids. Even I would say it seems like it's for them. The whole game takes place in this one fairly small, very small area. And all you do, the main appeal is that you can it's like a Pokemon game where you have monsters and you fight them against other monsters. But the thing is, you don't go out and collect them, you draw them. And it's got this crazy software that it uses where you draw a 2D image, like a circle, for example. But then as soon as you're finished drawing it, it becomes a 3D object, and with animations and everything. And so as you progress through the game, you become able, at first you can only draw a body. So you draw like a big triangle or something as your monster and just give it some eyes or whatever. And then your triangle's bouncing all around, and you have it fight against other monsters. But then you can eventually get to the point where you can give it arms, and you can draw legs and a head and all these different parts. And the bigger you draw them, the more powerful they are. So you basically the whole loop of this game is you go fight other people's monsters, you gain colors, you gain amounts of color by winning, and then you go back to your home and you use that color to draw more bigger monsters, and you just keep on going and going and going. The story is very dramatic. Not gonna give anything away. This is the first game that I believe Studio Ghibli has ever collaborated on. I'm not sure to what degree they were involved, but the art is very reminiscent of any Studio Ghibli movie. The music does sound unique. I don't know that I don't believe it was composed by Joe Hisaishi, but it does sound very unique. I haven't heard that kind of music in any other game. And it's a real treat if you don't mind the grind. It's basically just a straight up grind and lots of drawing.
Coming in at number 2, we've got Crimson Tears. This is published by Capcom. That's right, a Capcom, and it's an action RPG. So this game, what's it about? It's about 3 androids who, they don't know what the hell is going on. They're kind of being abandoned by the scientists who created them and by the leader of their organization they fight for. So the whole point of the game is to try to find their identities, who they are, what were they created for, etc. So it's an action RPG, but it's also a little bit of a roguelike. Every time you enter a dungeon, you will get randomly generated areas, randomly generated enemies, and so on. You're gonna advance through several different floors, several different rooms, finding keys, and until you get all the keys, you cannot meet the boss of each stage. And it's an action RPG because there's a lot of strong RPG elements. Every time you can play as 3 playable characters. There's two girls and the guy, and you can play as any of them at any given time. And actually, if you die with the boss, you can restart the whole stage with another character and so on. But there's also a town, and in this town, of course, there are RPG elements like you level up, you customize, the accessories and shit. But the strong point is that there's a town, and you gotta work towards rebuilding this town, this part of the city that is kind of ruined. And there's a shop where you can buy weapons, upgrades, and all that kind of stuff. So Crimson Tears, one of the most obscure games published by Capcom. All right, so number one is a shoot 'em up, and you've got it right there.
Right here, it's Akai Katana, and this is one of those amazing cave shoot 'em ups. Cave is actually known for their vertical shoot 'em ups like the Donpachi, Mushi Hime-sama, and the Splaluda series. And this is one of those shoot 'em ups that has a little bit of the Second World War topics, but also mix it up with a little bit of the Japanese culture. It actually kind of reminds me another game called Tengai from CQ. And this game is fantastic because first of all, it's a bullet hell shooter in Xbox 360. The idea is that you can play single player or multiplayer. This particular version on Xbox 360 has the original mode, the arcade mode. It also has a remixed mode and an arranged mode. Each one of them actually changes a little bit the mechanics of the game. Actually, some shoot 'em up fans actually consider this version to be even better than the arcade one. Wow. And the basic mechanic of this game is you have 2 modes. One is the attack mode, and then the other one is the defensive mode. In the defensive mode, you actually get like a bubble around you, and all the bullets that are going to you, you are going to deflect them. When you're in attack mode, you become weak, or you can be reached by the bullets, but your attack is going to be much more powerful, right? The game itself has a really good challenge, right? It's probably one of those games that is not recommended for a newbie, but definitely if you have a little bit of experience with shoot 'em ups, you are going to enjoy this a lot. This is Akai Katana. Is again a really, really good and rare game.
All right, so there you go, guys. You got now 10 super obscure gems that maybe, in our opinion, you should give it a try. Give them a try. Thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time.
Thank you.